This is David Dominguez, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studio is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Big Strix Vinyl Records and Sports Cards, located in Rock Island, Illinois. New, vintage, and previously owned. You can find it at Big Strix. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. And tonight's guest is
David Dominguez, a producer, engineer, mixer, man of many hats.
Yeah. He's worked with the likes of Guns N' Roses,
Weezer,
Papa Roach,
Tupac,
Queen Latifah,
Stained,
Limp Bizkit,
The Offspring,
and many, many more. What's he promoting?
Crank Up Studios and Records.
Yeah, hey, let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. David, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Yeah, David, thanks for joining us tonight.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're excited to have you. Thanks for your participation. We've been looking forward to this for weeks now. So let's get right into it. Your title is producer, engineer, mixer. You're a man that can do it all on the other side of the glass. But, for you, out of those three titles, which one comes first? Is it the producer part, the engineer, or the mixer?
For me personally, it's engineer. That's kind of what I came up doing. A lot of the bigger records I've been a part of, I've engineered, and it's something I absolutely love. I love getting tones. I love the production part. Love the mixing part. Usually, I try to co-produce with the bands that I'm working with because it's my thought is it's their music. Who am I to come in and try to change anything? I try to enhance it. But I've worked with producers as an engineer who come in and try to they basically shotgun everything and try to start over from scratch, and the bands tend to resent it. So I personally come in and co-produce, enhance what they have. But the engineering part is something I love.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. I think in your bio it said you manage 519 Studios. Can you tell us a little bit about what the setup of that studio and how it works?
That was a while back.
Okay.
That was, and I should have taken that. I don't know if I have it, so right now, as of today, it was announced today, I've partnered up with a label called Cranked Up Records,
okay.
And we're opening up a small mix room here in LA called Crank Up Records West, and I'll be doing a lot of my mixing and overdubs out of that room, with the eye on hopefully year is opening up a tracking room. So that's been it. He just announced it today, and I guess there's going to be a press release today and tomorrow. And house engineer, mixer, producer, as well as doing A&R.
Oh, very cool. But before we go back into your work into your archives, can you talk a little bit more about your recent work? What have you been working on in the present time right now?
Yeah, so we got the Cranked Up thing, and I've worked with a couple of their artists. I work with a band called Johnny Law. I think they're from Michigan, Indiana or Michigan. I mixed their record, and that's how I got hooked up with Cranked Up. Is they submitted a Cranked Up. Cranked Up's going to put it out, and we just got to talking. So Johnny Law, real good AC/DC style band, very cool, very old school rock. Another band I worked with I think they're from Missouri. I'm sorry, some of these I forget where they're from, but I think they're from Missouri. Band called Lifeline. Absolutely love these guys. I've been talking to them for a few years. I've mixed a couple of their songs. They're tracking another one this week. I'll be mixing that. My goal is during the summers, to either I get out there, they come out here, and we actually produce like an EP or a full-length record with them. Really cool, modern rock, great vocalists, great guitars, great drums, everything about them. Very cool stuff.
Excellent.
Another band I actually love it. They're more alternative rock, but they still rock. And that rock is a band called The Post, and I know they're from Louisiana. So they're great singer, Birdie, guitar players are amazing. But they have this very cool old school rock with an alternative vibe. And I mastered their record maybe about a year and a half ago. And that got put out. And then they contacted me. We've been in contact. So Indiana to produce a full length record with them sometime after the first of the year.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Well, I guess talk a little bit about the satisfaction of working with independent artists and up and coming artists, enhancing their what they've got. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Channeling and working with young artists.
Yeah, I love it. It's probably, I like that more than anything. I did their demos, and I engineered their demos with Jay Baumgartner producing, and that got them the deal on DreamWorks. So back then they were an up and coming band. So I absolutely love working with up and coming bands because they're enthusiastic. They're willing to try anything. They're not kind of set in their ways. They really want to get out there and try just different things and have fun. And that makes it fun in the studios when a band is really geared up to try anything that you throw at them.
Oh, that's so cool.
I also love it is. And I love the fact that they kind of soak in anything. There's a couple of bands I've worked with that we kind of rearranged the songs a little bit. This was a couple of years ago, and I kind of gave them a new pattern of thinking, I guess you could say, about how to structure the song and layering some vocals. And they went back and actually wrote the next EP using that kind of formula, and it was amazing. It came out great. So they were from Missouri, I think. So nice. I love working with new bands. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into your archive of work. 1996, you were the engineer for Weezer's Pinkerton album. Can you talk a little bit more about the opportunity of working on that album, I believe, as an engineer? How were you able to approach things working with those guys?
Yeah, I was one of many. This was the tail end of that record. Joe Barresi did a lot. I forget who else engineered some of that. Adam Casper. So Adam Casper, Seattle, working at Hollywood Sound, and he had worked with Soundgarden, and he got called to work on that record. He was working on it, and I guess Soundgarden called up at some point and said, "Hey, we need you back." So I got the call, "Hey, would you mind taking over?" I walk in and really literally just stood one. I think I was there for less than 20 minutes when we were already recording some guitars and some background vocals. So I came in late in the process, but it was still very cool. Rivers was amazing. He's just an amazing songwriter. I would put up the reels of tape and I would start listening to what they were doing. And I kept thinking, this is nothing like the Blue album, but it's absolutely very cool. We did extra guitar overdubs, background vocals. I think we did background vocals with I forget who their bass player. Oh, who was their bass player was at the time, but he was also in a band called the Rentals. Oh, yeah. So he was go to Europe with the Rentals, so we had to nail all his background vocals. So I think we spent 2 days doing that, and the rest of the week we just did guitars and hung out and ate.
Matt Sharp.
Yeah, Matt. Yeah,
Oh, very cool.
yeah, because he was leaving. Yeah, this was. I don't know if he was there for the third record, but I know he was leaving with the Rentals. So
Yeah.
we literally had to get everything done. The very first day I was there, we started doing backgrounds and extra guitars. So.
So I guess maybe to double down on the next question, working on the Pinkerton album, coming in on the tail end of an album like you did, instead of starting at the beginning, did it take away or give you more fuel to be more creative in the mastering process or engineering process of this? I guess pardon my ignorance for this, but how did it change your approach on dealing with the finished product?
I didn't really change much. I had to come in and not screw things up.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it. It's like they had a workflow that they liked. Came in, I think I mic'd up a couple of amps. There was already a vocal mic set up. I double checked, made sure the compression was, and just made sure that I could continue their flow, however they saw fit. Like there was a couple of times where I've told the story where they would be a little bit late, come in, we'd start tracking, and I think the other guitar player comes in and tells Rivers that he sees Beck down the street at a open air market on Sunset. So they both just bolt, and 2 hours later, I'm still sitting there waiting for them to come back. They would say, "We'll be right back," and bailed. And I get a call about 3 hours later. Hey, I think we're going to call it a day. That was it. Came in the next day and ordered some food and kept going. It was that kind of session where whatever they felt like they needed to do and they wanted to do, we did. As soon as that session ended, within I think it was about 2 week period, I started work at another studio called Rumbo. That's where I did Chinese Democracy. And I'm going to get coffee, and all of a sudden I look over and there's Rivers in the studio, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, working on a session. What are you doing?" Like, "Oh, we're going to track one more song." And they did it with Gil Norton, who's a great engineer producer. And I don't actually think they got anything. They tracked a song, but they set up in the studio, and that was kind of a cool vibe. Just like, oh, the guys remembered me from 2 weeks ago. So,
yeah, very cool.
But yeah, in 2000, you worked with the band Offspring, the album Conspiracy of One. Can you talk a little bit about your contributions and working with them?
they were going into NRG to do the next record. I just finished a Papa Roach record, and I was supposed to start the Stain record right after that, and that got put like on a 6-week delay. So the manager called me and said, "Hey, do you know any good assistants around town? I need to get someone in to do this," because Brendan O'Brien, the producer, did not want to do it there, but the band did. And I guess Brendan had a not so great experience the last time he was in. I'm a huge Brendan O'Brien fan, so I said, "Tell you what, let me do the first 2 or 3 weeks. I'll train whoever they have assistants or runners that they moved up to assistants, and that's how it usually works." So I said, "I'll train whoever you're going to move up to work with me, and I just want to work with Brendan." So we started doing our thing, and I was the assistant on it at first, and I'd worked with Nick Didia, his engineer.
Yeah.
So Nick and I reconnected. "Hey, how you doing?" And probably within like 3 weeks later, Nick had to go take off and do a week or two on another record just to start tracking. So Brendan was going to do the whole thing. Nick was the one who suggested, "Why don't you use Dave?" Like, cool. And during this time, before Nick took off, I got a phone call from a manager who had become my manager at the time, because the Papa Roach record had just exploded, and I was getting calls from management companies about coming on board. So I said, sure. So I signed with the company, and as we're in there, I get a call, and the call comes over, and they go, "Hey, Dave, Sandy's on the phone for you." And take the phone call, and Brendan afterwards asked me, like, "Why is Sandy," I won't mention the company name, "from the management company calling you?" I was like, "Oh, he's my manager." And he's like, "How does an assistant have a manager?" And I said, "Well, I'd done the Pop Roach record, and that's blown." I'm like, "Oh, you did that?" "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, why are you assisting?" And I fessed up, like, because I'm a huge fan of yours, and I wanted to work with you. It's like, oh, that's very cool. And then he just kind of opened up and gave me just amazing tips on how to deal with the psychology of working with bands and how you approaches things. And then that's maybe a day or two later is when Nick said, hey, just use Dave. So I got to hang out for a week and record and be Brendan's guy for a week, which is amazing. The guy's just probably the most talented producer I've ever worked with.
Yeah,
that is amazing.
Absolutely.
I own a lot of albums with his name on it.
Yeah, we sure do.
Oh,
absolutely.
It runs the gamut.
It really does. To capitalize on your work in 2000, but you're also the credited engineer on the Orgy single, Ava. That song is my all-time favorite Orgy track. I absolutely love that song. I listened to it this morning when I was working out, but can you give our listeners an insight to your working relationship with Amir Durak and Ryan Chuck? Two guys that are musicians, but they also are they produce music. They're also behind the other side of the glass as well. I guess maybe talk a little bit more about working with those guys. They are absolutely brilliant and talented.
Yeah. Oh, that was fun. I had been working with the producer Josh Abraham, who I think we had done a Powerman 5000 song. Mm-hmm. And I think it was before Stained. I think it was before the Stained record. But he called me at home and said, hey, you know what? They're mixing the Orgy record, but we need to get in and do one more song. Would you mind going in and tracking it with them at NRG? It's like, no problem. So I showed up, and it's Ryan and Amir and Jay, and I think Bobby was the drummer, and Paige, the bass player. So I do what I do. I mic up the drums. I set up the amps, the assistants, and I'm miking things up, and I'm getting levels before they get there. And they have, I think, a tech there, and we're doing it. And they go out and play. And we track, and we a couple small edits, and we started overdubbing. And as they come in, we listen, and they go, oh, that feels good. And what you said about Eva being your favorite song on that record, I've had other people tell me that too. What I realized, and what I'll tell you, is they told me that was the first time they'd ever tracked in the studio together. On the first record, it was all done in pieces. Oh. The drummer would play the loops. They'd come in and they'd play their parts separately. This is the first time they actually tracked as a band in the studio with that song. Mm. And that's what they told me. And I thought could be a possible reason why it feels the way it does. Cause they're all just, it's a flow. There's a click going, but they're kind of moving, and it feels good.
Oh, it's just a fantastic song. You did a hell of a job.
Oh, thank you. That was 3 days of Red Bull and coffee, like 19-hour days. Like we got to get this done. We got to get this done. Because I think Dave Ray Ogilvy was mixing the record in the studio next door. And he was the one who came up to me and was like, hey, man, I got the tracks. It sounds great. I'm like, oh, thank you. It's like it's done really well. And that was a compliment to me. He's a great mixer. So that felt good.
Ryan and Amira have both been on as our guests on the podcast. And what fascinates me is artists that are just as fluent with their instruments to that behind the other glass, producing music. Did you find that somewhat intimidating at all, working with these guys that can go on both sides of the glass?
Not at all. Because at that point, I don't know if, other than I think they co-produced the first record, I don't really think they'd been doing, I could be wrong, but I don't think they'd been doing a lot of producing. And if they had, I didn't know, and I just treated it like another session. Like, hey, let's try this. Why don't we try this? And they did take the helm of it. I was brought in as an engineer, and I kind of knew my role was to get tones, make sure we could do things, do a couple of edits here and there. But I did feel like, they were very open to anything I had to suggest. Sometimes it was the coolest thing. I think it was Amir. He taught me something which is very cool, which is their guitar tone was one of their guitars into a hyperfuzz pedal, a Boss hyperfuzz, straight into Pro Tools. And I was like, oh, that's that gritty, like heavily distorted. And I actually bought a hyperfuzz like 2 weeks later because of that.
Oh, very cool. Just absolutely love the song. And when I read your bio, when I was studying up on you, I thought, this is the guy who did this song. My God.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was written about Josh Abraham's mom, the producer's mom, who had passed away.
Oh, wow.
So that's another thing. Yeah. So her name was Eva, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it was about her.
Oh, so cool.
she'd been like, I guess the team mom on the first record, so they wrote it for her, which is very cool.
It is very cool.
Well, I guess you kind of alluded to Papa Roach, that Infest album. That thing was big. It blew up when it did come out, and you heard it everywhere. But can you talk a little bit about your contributions to working with them?
Yeah, I left the Guns N' Roses session, the Chinese Democracy session, and I was kind of floating around town doing gigs here and there. And I was at a place called Stagg Street Studio, and the manager, Melody, told me, "Hey, NRG might be looking for someone if you're interested." So I went down there, talked to manager Kit, and said, "Hey, we need someone to work with Don Gilmore, who actually has produced Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory and first 2 or 3 records. But this is before Linkin Park. And I can't remember the name of the band he was working with, but he needed someone to come in and possibly do Pro Tools and do a little engineering. And I got hired to do that. And about literally a week in, he was like, "Hey, you know what? I got to go back." He's going to fire the Pro Tools guy or the engineer. I can't remember what it was, because he had hired him and he wasn't doing the job the way he thought he should do, because I'm going to move him into your spot. So I'm so sorry. And like, no big deal. Hey. And so I leave and Kit knows the whole thing. And she said, "I promised you 2 weeks worth of work. I'm going to give it to you. Jay, the owner, is doing some demos from a band from Sacramento. Would you be interested?" Like, yeah. So I walk in and I meet Jay, and he looks at me and goes, "Why do I know you?" It's like, "Oh, you came in." And he had come into interview for the role on Chinese Democracy. And I was like, and I was the one who kind of gave him the lowdown of how everything was set up. So I got to meet him then. And he's like, "Oh, that's right." He goes, "Yeah, so check this out. We're doing this band from Sacramento," and he throws in a VHS, and it's Papa Roach just killing. There must have been 500 kids at this outdoor thing. And I was like, "Yeah, that looks like fun. Let's do that." So I think they came in about a week later, and we did, I think it was a 5-song demo for Warner Brothers, in fact. And the A&R guy got fired halfway through the demos. And Warner passed right away. It's like, "He's gone. We're going to pass on you guys." But Jay kept it up, and we finished the demos. He mixed it. As he's mixing, I'm starting another band, tracking another band. And I don't know, within a couple of months, I hear that DreamWorks is picking him up. And I was like, "Oh, that's great." And I was at a place called Conway Studios, and Jay was there mixing someone, and I was in one of the other rooms tracking. It's like, "Hey, Papa Roach got picked up. Are you interested in doing the record with me?" It's like, done, I'm there. And that was it. I think we started, I don't even know when we started the date, but I think we started within a month. We were back at NRG tracking.
Wow.
And that thing just blew. I mean, I remember being on the freeway, driving home from a session 2:00 in the morning. And if you've ever been to LA, sometimes even at 2:00 in the morning, there's traffic, especially going through Hollywood. And I'm going through Hollywood and there's traffic. And I'm like, "What is this?" And it's during the summer, the windows are down, and a car pulls up next to me slowly, doing 5 miles an hour, and it's blasting Last Resort. And I kind of looked over, and it's got to be. He doesn't have the CD yet, so I start flipping around the radio, and it's on K-Rock, and I just start blasting, and like, that was pretty intense. And then from that point on, it was just like everywhere you turn, the video was being played, the song is being played. It's get played now. It's getting played still now. I'm at the gym a couple of days ago, and it's on the radio there. It's on the speakers there.
That's so cool. Well, we're going to get to one of my favorite parts of this interview, and there's no secret you worked as an engineer / mixer for the Chinese Democracy album. Our listeners don't know, Guns N' Roses. Yeah, and I guess the I don't know even how to form the question the right way, so I'm just going to try to say this. What I guess maybe a complex, never-ending recording process off and on of this album. Can you can you tell our listeners a little bit more about your experience working on the Chinese Democracy album? And I don't know, was Axl in and out of the studio for what, like 15 years on this album or something like that?
It was 10 years total.
Okay, 10 years.
Yeah, I think 10 total. But he'd been working on it for 15. He'd been working on it Actually, the full band with Matt Sorum had started working on song ideas 5 years before they went in, and then the band eventually fell apart, and that's when he formed the new band and went in. So I was working at Dumbo. I was a staff engineer, and I had become kind of like Mike Klink's go-to guy there. Mike Klink produced Appetite for Destruction and Use Your Illusions 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd been Mike's guy at Rumbo for a long time, and I was kind of done. I was like, I'm done. This is it. I think I'm going to either go independent or I'm going to quit. Like I had a lot of hours in the studio for, a lot of years, and like it just kind of burned out at that point. And I'd actually told the studio managers, like, I think I'm done. I'm within the next couple of months. I think I'm out of here. And like, all right. Apparently Mike had called the studio and said, hey, I want Dave on this. And she told him, like, Dave's thinking about quitting. Mike calls me at home and says, you got to hold on for me, please. Like, I got a band coming in. They're going to be in for 4 months, 2 months of writing, 2 months of recording, and then you can do whatever you want. And I was like, the first thing I thought was like 4 months. I was like, I asked him, he was like, is it Guns? And he goes, I can't say anything, but yes, stay away, stay around. Because I would always ask him Guns question, how they recorded Appetite. I'd get the Axl stories and the Slash, so I'd get all the stories about them during that time. And, as a kid, being an LA kid, like, I grew up on that. Like, even though it took a year for Appetite to break here in LA, it was being played all over KLOS and KNAC way before it blew up. And I actually think I remember walking into Music Plus as a kid in Pasadena and buying Live Like a Suicide, like 6 months before Appetite was out, because I knew of them. Like 13 or 14 Guns for the first time, and they were actually Hollywood Rose at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Axl that story. Like, yeah, it was 13. I think I went to the Troubadour was all ages, and it still is. But I think I was like, I think I was 14 when I saw you guys. And he was like, really? So I remember the opening band was the main band was Hellion, and you were opening, and you guys walked down and goes, yeah, I remember that show. And it's kind of cool. But anyway, Mike asked me to stay, so I stuck around, and it was a major setup. It was full band ISO booth plus PA, and then playing live. They were going to write as they went for 2 months and then record it for 2 months. And we went from, this was back in the tape days, so we had to have the tape machines ready, DAT machines ready just to record everything, and then ADAT. So we were going to all three at the same time. Once we started, we were going to go to all three. So the first couple of months, it was just ADAT. They would write ideas down and, or record ideas, and I'd take them down. And Axl we worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So he'd some show up at midnight, sometimes at 3 in the morning. He kind of just threw randomly, so the band was always not sure when he was going to be there. He could just keep working. The minute they knew that he would call and say, I'm not coming in tonight, it could be midnight. He said, yeah, I'm not going to be in today. They would just bail. They were out of there. So, because what the original plan was to rehearse Appetite for Destruction, re-record that, and then release songs here and there on the internet. That was, and I think they actually did that at some point, but that was the original plan. So it was intense. It was like, Axl was amazing to me though. Like, but it was still intense. Like the setup was, and then we eventually got a Pro Tools rig that Billy Howardale from Perfect Circle ran. He and Josh, the drummer, I think actually recorded part of the Perfect Circle record on Axl's dime. When like no one was around, they would record drums on, and I think that was that first record that they did that on. That's the story. That's what I've heard. I'm not quite sure, but that's the rumor. But it was very cool, especially being an LA kid and growing up with that. And I'm just going, I'm sitting next to Axl Rose next to the console. And there was one point where the band is rehearsing. He says he's going to be in. He shows up around midnight, and I have dim on the console mute, so I'm not listening really loud. And they're turned down, and I'm watching MTV. Paradise City comes on, and they're playing, I don't know what song they're playing, but and I'm watching the video, Paradise City, Guns N' Roses on the TV, and I hear the door open, and it's Axl. And he kind of looks at the TV, and he kind of looks at them, and he goes, and he just sits there, and he just bobbing his head. Now, the song ends, I shut it off, and I undimmed the console so you can kind of hear what they're doing. He goes, man, that is the best sounding tribute band I've ever heard. And that was funny. I was like, oh, it was cool. He was, he was a cool dude. I liked him. Like, I know people say things like have bad experiences with them, but never had a bad experience with them. He yelled at me one time, and that was it. And that was because I was erasing. He wanted something erased that he never wanted to hear again. And I was like, are you sure this is no one ever is going to hear this again? He's like, just erase it, and walked out. I'm like, done. So.
Just to double down on the Chinese democracy stuff, so many different musicians contributed to that album.
Yeah.
The likes of, Robin Fink and Buckethead and Brain Mantia, Tommy Stinson, and I can just kind of keep going on and on and on. But the thing that fascinated me, and I got to see that incarnation of Guns N' Roses in a live show with Robin Fink and Buckethead together on stage. It was truly, I felt magical watching those guys were on their A game. But any good stories about working with those guys in the studio together at the same time? I was
long gone by the time Buckethead got there. When I was there, it was Robin Fink, Tommy Stinson, Paul Hughey, who was Axl's friend from Indiana. I don't know if you ever heard the story. It's like apparently that's the reason that Slash quit, because he wanted Paul in the band and Slash was not having it. And then the two final, but they didn't have a drummer yet when they got in. They had like a drum audition, which was Michael Bland, Prince's drummer.
Yes.
If you ever seen Diamonds and Pearls?
Yes.
Michael Bland and Josh Freese. And Dizzy had made a loop, and there was this weird, odd time signature during the middle of the loop, and they had to play to that. So Michael Bland comes in on the first day and just does a killer job, and that little section comes up, and he kind of stumbles and then gets back into it. And then Josh comes in the next day, and they put up the loop again, and I'm recording, and he's playing, and that part comes up, and he does some crazy feel to get out of it and nails the one. And like, it was like a touchdown in the Super Bowl. The whole room just exploded, like hands up. Whoa. That was, but it was just the original guys. I was there for 8 months and nothing had been written. There were a lot of ideas, but nothing solid. Like they had was it Riyadh and the Bedouins was the title, Prostitute was the title. Yeah. This I Love was actually an old Guns song with the original band. And that's why Axl yelled at me, because at the very end he's whispering like, I think it was like, Stephanie, I love you, or This I Love Stephanie. And he heard that, like, just erase it. And that's when I went, are you sure? And then he yelled at me, just erase it. So I looked over at Kenny, the assistant, and like, I put in because like, no one's ever going to hear this again. And I erased it. And I was like, that was crazy. So there were some titles that they were there. There was a few others I can't remember, but that stuck on the record. But literally, like, there were no complete songs when I left 8 months later. Like, nothing. And that's why it took 10 years, because I think every time a band member left, he replaced all their parts with the newest band member. So someone came in to fill Robin's place. I think that person re-recorded all Robin's parts. When Robin joined back, he went in and re-recorded some of his old parts again. So it was just, again, I wasn't there during that. I had the great fortune of being invited to the Axl's assistant would call me and invite me to the Halloween parties and the Christmas parties and things like that. So anytime they had a party at the studio, I would go do that and hang out. And I think I took Dave, we were doing the Papa Roach record, and I think I took Dave Buckner, the drummer, to one of the parties. I was like, hey, you want to go? It's like, we're done. And he's like, yeah, I want to meet Axl. And so he got to meet Axl before they actually played together, like Rock in Rio. And so we got to hear a lot of the stuff that what they were doing at that point. But again, that was still not going to be released another 5 or 6 years, which is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
8 years maybe.
I love hearing all the studio stories because I don't want to take anything away from modern musicians where they mail all the tracks in and can compile them with Pro Tools and different things like that, because they can put out some pretty amazing music too, but you miss out on these really cool behind-the-scenes stories.
Yeah, that's the best part, that like those, like I get a lot of young bands, like people who talk about the newer bands, and they're like, so, what was Rivers like? What was Dexter from Offspring like? What was that? And it's always about, because I actually worked with Slash, Duff, and Izzy before Democracy, because they got together to write for Izzy's solo record. So I got to work, and I'd worked with Slash before on like some Quentin Tarantino soundtrack thing that he was recording guitar on. So I got to work with Slash, and then they came back later, and there's a picture on the internet that I think I took of all three of them at Rumbo, and I like, every time that pops up in a memory, I get a hold of Sean, the chief engineer who was at Rumbo, and I'm like, dude, like, this is insane. Like, these guys, I think they played once or twice together again. Like when Izzy showed up to play on stage with Axl and the guys, but it was rare, and like I thought that was just the coolest thing to have those three guys just jamming and telling stories, and it was amazing.
That's so cool.
I guess just talk a little bit about, you said you were born and raised in Los Angeles. Can you talk a little bit about the scene as setting the producing, mixing stuff aside, as a fan, do you still go out and, to hit shows or go see other bands or follow other bands, or do you want to concentrate on what you're working on now, or how does it work for you? Oh,
no. I love talking about, like, my ex-wife, who's now my ex-wife and my girlfriend, then we went to tons of shows. I had 2 jobs during the summer when I was like 16, and I worked so I could buy a car and save up money for concert tickets. So we saw everybody that came through town. Yeah. We'd go to the Forum, Irvine Meadows, but it was Irvine Meadows back then, Long Beach Arena. Then we'd go up to Troubadour, the Whiskey. There was Gazzari's back then, the Central, which is now the Viper Room. So we were down there all the time. Like, it was a great time back then. From late 80s into the early 90s, there was a lot of music going on, a lot of great bands. One of my favorite bands when I was like 13 was a band called Odin.
Yes.
And I actually got to meet and hang out and have coffee with the drummer of Odin, who's now in LA Guns, Sean Duncan.
Yes.
So, in fact, I just posted on Sean's something he had posted, and he posted something back. So, but like, it's so weird to be that LA kid and love Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue and Rat, and like said Odin. And then years later, I got to work on a Rat record. I got to meet Tommy and Mick and Hank in the studio situation. This is before everybody knew about Mick, and he's trying to carry his cabinet out with Tommy during his, what was that really horrible record they made when Vince came back?
Oh, the Generation Swine, yeah.
Yeah, so they were finishing that, and Mick kept dropping it, so hey, happy, and Tommy was really nice, and got to meet them, and I recorded Tommy. A few years later, he came and did some guest drums on a band called Professional Murder Music. He played drums on that, so I got to record Tommy later. But being a kid and going all these bands, and big thing out here is Band Magazine. We had all the bands ads and all these clubs, places, at the very end of it, very tail of the magazine. And I was like, oh yeah, I think about it now. It's like, I'm lucky. I'm very fortunate and grateful that a lot of those bands that I got to see play as a kid, like I got to meet later on. Yeah. Granted, past their heyday, but still got to meet them. Like, I tell one of the people, like, I saw Poison in San Bernardino with Cinderella and Loudness, I think. Mm. And then years later, I got to work with Bret Michaels, who is, by the way, the nicest guy I've ever met in the rock scene. Hands down, the nicest person I've ever worked with. Oh, so just a sweetheart of a person. Really cool. But yeah, all those bands, and then also, being a kid and growing up in the San Gabriel Valley, I got to to meet Dave Pritchard, who was a guitar player in Armored Saint before he passed away. So, even like that early thrash kind of stuff, here in LA was kind of big. Metallica, like I loved Armored Saint back then. So yeah, and the cool thing is just to be able to meet these people years later and go, oh yeah, I saw you play here. And they kind of remember the shows. I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Absolutely. Well, it wouldn't behoove me to not bring up your work with Stabbing Westward. It hits close to home because the guys from Stabbing Westward are fairly close to our area in Illinois. They grew up in the Western Illinois region, and the original members of the band attested Western Illinois University. Can you talk a little bit more about working with Chris Hall and the rest of the band? Yeah,
they were doing a remix of a song that was on one of the records, Waking Up Beside You, I think was the title. And they did a remix. They came in, they needed someone to mix. They called NRG, and then NRG recommended me. And I went in, brought the tracks, and I forget who was in the room with me, but they were like, you know what? I need some extra stuff. So is there a guitar here? Like, yeah. So we got a guitar and an amp, and he relayed guitars on we played a few things and added a couple of things. And I think we added a couple of things of percussion on there. And it was basically supposed to be a mix session, but we overdubbed some stuff and some guitars and some percussion. That was very cool. That was like, I think one of the first like heavy, like electronic mixes that I had ever done, and was really nervous. That was like, I always tell people, like, I didn't get nervous a lot in the studio because I kind of go, okay, I know what I'm doing, I think. So I don't have to be nervous. But that was nervous because a band calls you, and I knew who they were, and they go, hey, we want you to mix this. And they're sitting there next to you, and I'm like, I don't know. And it worked out well. They loved the mix. They put it out, and I think it was on a soundtrack for something. But it was a quick it was a 2-day session. That was it. Left the mix up, does some overdubs, and they were in and out. It was quick and easy.
Oh, very nice. I have one question left. I guess this will be our last question for the night. So,
cool.
Yeah, throughout the 90s, you worked with as an engineer for hip hop world with Tupac Shakur and Queen Latifah. Can you talk a little bit more about your transition working as a rock producer in the hip hop industry end of things?
Yeah, I actually started in hip hop first.
Oh, okay.
That was the first studio I ever worked at was a place called Echo Sound, and they needed like a night manager / engineer guy, someone who could collect the money and run a session if need be. So it was a big hip hop studio. It was Tupac, Ice Cube, who else was there? Yo-Yo, all the big producers, DJ Pooh, Johnny J, they all worked there, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun. The main guy there, Bob Morse, was a great guitar player and bass player, so he would like overdub a lot of the stuff for them. And I was just the guy, and another engineer, Michael, and I can't remember his last name, but between those two guys, when they didn't want a session or couldn't do a session, that was me. I'd come in, record vocal. It was hip hop. So it was a lot of vocals if they already had the track laid down. But if a producer came in, it was like hooking them to MPC, getting the tracks to tape, and that was it. So I'd worked with Tupac there once, and then I left there and I went to a place called Red Zone for a few years, and that was a lot of rock stuff. I did a lot of rock stuff there. Left there and went to a place called I forget what it was called now. Soundcastle. And I think within my first month there, Tupac had come back and booked a session, and I got to work on that. And so he kind of looked and kind of remembered me, kind of. A lot of engineers he's worked with. Because he looked for me, I was like, oh, I used to work at Echo Sound. I was like, oh yeah, how's Bob? And it's like, that kind of thing. So this was pre-Death Row days, I tell people. Mm-hmm. So he was the thoughtful poet that you've heard about. Like, he was nice, polite. He was still, rough when he had to be, but like, he was always polite, always thank you. And hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And they had canceled a session one day and didn't tell him. And he showed up and I said, hey, your manager canceled. And he's like, oh, really? He's like, oh, that sucks. And it's like, because did they order the fight for me? Which was De La Hoya was fighting that night against someone who was fighting. But I said, yeah. It's like, hey, do you mind if me and my friend could watch it? It's like, of course, you paid for it. So went up to the lounge. They ordered pizza. We played pool and we watched the fight. And that was the coolest thing ever. That was my youngest son. He would, growing up, he's like, I don't like rock. And it would hurt my feelings. It would hurt me to the core.
I know what that's
like. I don't like rock music. It's like, yeah. He goes, and Tupac was his favorite rapper at the time. And I don't never talk about work. I never say, oh, I did this or that. Or they kind of knew. They would hear stuff. Or my wife then, my then ex-wife now, would kind of say, oh, Dad worked on that. He did this. But my daughter told my son, like, Dad worked with Tupac, right? And he's like, what? Like, yeah. And that's when all of a sudden he was like, Dad, what was it like? What was he like? And so it's like, did a lot of some yo-yo sessions there at Echo Sound. There was a couple other big hip hop. Then I one Ice Cube or two Ice Cube sessions there as well. And then Queen Latifah was a Conway connection. She was working at Conway a lot. I got called from Conway because there was a situation where some of the guys couldn't handle her. And so they brought me in, and I realized, a lot of what they do is like quick and, hey, I need this done now. And the guys would kind of maybe freeze up in the headlights. And, working with Axl and Tupac and guys like that, it was like, okay, I think I can handle this. And walked in and got along with her great. She wanted something done quick. I said, I handle it the way I should. Give me 1 second, please. Oh, that there? Okay, cool. I'll get rid of it. And she was awesome. I think I did probably 10 sessions with her. I was there with her for maybe 8 months, almost a year total, in and out of Conway, and did some that, I forget what, that Ice Age soundtrack. Did some stuff with her on that. Did a couple of original songs with her. I think I did one of her jazz songs as well, because she was doing, I don't know if you remember, she got into the jazz thing for, she's a great singer. So she was doing a jazz thing and did some of that. Whatever she needed done, I did. We even did like commercials, a couple of commercials, voiceover for commercials.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, but she brought in Jada Kiss. You know who Jada Kiss is? Jada Kiss came in and did some songs with her, so I got to work with Jada Kiss too. So that was very cool. Yeah. And it was weird because back in the Tupac days, it was like, at Echo Sound, it was one guy working or two guys, the producer and the rapper working, and like 50 guys hanging out. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do any more hip hop when I got the Queen Latifah call. And it was just her and her assistant, and it was amazing. And same thing with Jada Kiss. I think he showed up with his manager, and she wasn't there, but like she goes, he wants to do this, and it was cool on the Queen Latifah track, and it was amazing. They were all very cool, very mellow, and they're also 20 years old or 25 years older at this point too. So, they don't need a big crowd to hang out with them.
Yeah, it was so cool. Well, David, we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
No, other than the Cranked Up Records deal. That's going to be very cool. We're going to be looking for young upcoming bands. Curtis McKinney, the owner of the label, has been nothing but amazing to me. We've been talking about this for some time now, and it happened today. In fact, one of the first press release went out today. It was announced today. We'll have the Cranked Up Studios West open up January 1st, I believe, is the kind of tentative date, January 2nd, to get in there and start mixing and overdubbing, with the hopes that within a year we'll have a tracking room somewhere and do full bands. And he's got some really cool artists. I've worked like 3 of his bands now. Johnny Law, who will put it out. I'm mixing a band called Rivethead that he has on the label that I'm mixing right now. And there's some other things in the pipeline with Cranked Up Records. So it's going to be very cool.
Oh, we're excited for you. Well, this is how things are going to work out once this one's ready to go. Jeff, the editing wizard over here, will get everything cleaned up, and it'll sound like $1 million. And please share it on your socials if you possibly can. We'd really appreciate it. I
posted today that would be on. And
fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
We want to thank you so much. And
thank you again. I appreciate it. All right. You have a good evening.
Thank you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Everybody grinds the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the headlights, fight the grip of fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do it here. Hey. Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take